Why is meditation, in brackets mindfulness, essential for students today? And I'll start with a quote from Winston Churchill. I've written a long speech because I didn't have time to write a short one. I think it's actually the hardest thing of all is to say something which could take a very long time, but to say it in a short time. So I'm going to try and perhaps emphasise a few of the things that I think are very important as to why students, why children, why teachers, why anybody really needs mindfulness or really needs meditation or contemplative part of life. When we're defining meditation, way back at those early meetings and thinking, well, what is it that all forms of meditation have in common? And it seems that they're all mental disciplines. They all operate on the level of the mind, training the mind in some way or other, that involve training attention. So to be able to train attention, to choose what to give attention to. Mindfulness, obviously, meditation can also be looked at as a general definition, but also the particular process or the aims of meditation or the effects that it has. So it could look at meditation in those lights as well. So what is mindfulness? Well, it uses the senses. It has a present moment orientation, observing body and mind, environment, sensory and mental and emotional experiences that are coming and going. So it's about paying attention in the present moment, intentionally, but also the attitude matters a lot as well, with openness, with an attitude of curiosity, with acceptance, non-judgment, learning to be equanimous, even in the presence of unpleasant experiences, learning to be at peace with whatever we're experiencing in the moment. So I think that meditation more generally, mindfulness in particular, is life's most important life skill. And these are some of the reasons for that. I'll just say a few things philosophically, and I won't hopefully take too much of John's thunder because I've just got some beautiful quotes and things there. But to say philosophically first, and we are living in a world these days, I think, for a lot of young people where there's no sense of meaning. There's nothing more important than the next hedonic hit that they might get from somewhere. And I think that is leaving, for many children and adolescents these days of life, it's pretty much bereft of meaning and purpose and real direction. So, just from a philosophical perspective, just the phrase, be still and know that I am God. But what is this stillness? How do we come to that stillness? What do we discover in that stillness, in that deep stillness? Like the eye of the hurricane, as it were, life is spinning around us, but there's this stillness and this core. As we say, in the eye, I think, is a very good metaphor. There's this conscious observer, witnessing and observing the movement that goes on around us. And that consciousness, that centre of our being, I think, is very much our core. And without it, it is the awareness, it is the thing that illuminates, that makes apparent to us our state of mind, our state of body in the world. It is, in a sense, the light that illuminates all the things we experience. And if we don't cultivate that awareness, that attention, then it's a little bit like living in the dark. Living as a bit of a machine on automatic pilot, just in the way that we've been programmed and habituated to behave. Habitual ways of thinking, taking on habitual attitudes without ever really reflecting on them and so on. So it really, in a sense, turns up the light, it turns up the dimmer switch, in a sense, in terms of our level of awareness. It has a potential to teach us about ourselves, to know ourselves better, to know what we are and what we're not. And this really comes into, from a therapeutic point of view as well, when talking about depression. Mostly we think that we are our thoughts, we are our feelings, we are our emotions. Whereas the more deeply we go into meditation, the more we realise we're the observer of those thoughts and feelings and sensations. They come and they go. But there's something in us that's still and steady, solid, that is observing these transient experiences. There's a permanence and impermanence. I think this may go to the heart of building a house on the rock or on the sand. It's, are we building on that which is permanent and steady, or are we trying to pin our life and our hopes on these things that are ever changing? And of course, if we think that happiness is dependent on success or wealth or all of these experiences that change, or pleasure or something else, then we're going to be disappointed. We're going to write a recipe for anxiety about getting those things or holding on to them, or grief in the constant losing of them because they are impermanent. Now those things can be enjoyed and experienced, but if it's from a central state of being, then we don't get attached to those things that are impermanent. We protect ourselves from anxiety and grief and the depression which we are so prone to these days. And I should mention too, in terms of all of the burdens of disease confronting developed countries these days, depression is in the process of becoming our #1 burden of disease. And current approaches to just treating it with drugs and so on are not turning the Titanic around at all. So, and I think that in deep meditation, that sense of oneness, a sense of wonder, but also a sense of gratitude as well are all possible. So philosophically, I think that meditative and contemplative life is probably the single most important discipline for giving us an experience of what we are at our core, not just on an intellectual level. But I think I'm more here to speak about some of the practical aspects of mindfulness and meditation. And I don't think we would be having these kinds of meetings. I don't think that just about every school in Victoria these days, at the very least a huge number of them, would be interested in meditation, or medical schools, or just about every undergraduate course at Monash has now integrated mindfulness into core curriculum. Right? Core curriculum, not as an elective you can do if you're interested, but actually that all students learn about it. I don't think that would happen if it wasn't on the back of some very important research and evidence that's accumulated. So the wisdom traditions have been onto this for thousands of years, but science is just starting to catch up. Science is not at the head of the game, science is catching up, but starting to catch up to the obvious. So from a child perspective or a student perspective, I think some of the most important ones are how to learn to deal with this modern world, which is literally driving people, and particularly kids, to distraction. And kids have taken on hook, line and sinker that the more technology you get, the better you are, but the more technology you have, the more attention problems you have. The more screen time a young child has, the more likely it is to have ADHD in later childhood. Children are multitasking their way to distraction and can't maintain attention very well and effectively. The technology is driving this so much. So in many ways, kids are being put in an environment in a very unquestioning way, and by adults who are not questioning either, and are being more and more distractible as time goes on. This affects learning, it affects executive functioning. Now that's a term some of you might be familiar with, but our executive functions are our higher functions. And attention regulation is the #1 executive function, because if we don't get the attention right, we don't get any of the others right. So take memory, for example. The attention centres are sitting slap bang behind the executive functioning areas of the brain. It's like a relay station. So if attention doesn't engage, memory doesn't engage. Some of you might have noticed that already, that if you're having a conversation with your partner and they're talking and you're nodding and all of a sudden you realise you're not paying attention, you haven't remembered a word of what they said, that's just like a near-death experience as your partner realises that you're not actually listening to them. And, or your eyes are going over the page, and you could even be reading a book on mindfulness, you're halfway through a chapter and all of a sudden realise I haven't taken in a word of what I'm reading. So memory doesn't operate if attention doesn't operate. Then also, for example, problem solving. So being a flexible, adaptive problem solver, and there's research on, say, mental flexibility. So you put people through increasingly complex problems, and most people hit a ceiling, at which point they become very mentally rigid, cognitive rigidity, and give up, can't solve the problem because the strategies they're using are not working. You give a person mindfulness training and they hit that ceiling where the strategies that have been working with the easy problems are no longer working, they're much more likely to start to be mentally flexible and creative. And look for other solutions, look for other things that maybe they haven't seen. So in terms of problem solving and mental flexibility, in terms of an ability to manage stress and to be able to function effectively. Some of my most important formative experiences in mindfulness weren't out of a book, or wasn't at a course, but were things I discovered in my own adolescence about how I functioned in terms of preparing for exams, or in exams. One of my most mindful experiences was in my Year 12 chemistry exam, which I finished in about an hour and a half, which I thought was a bit quick. I thought I knew chemistry reasonably well, but not that well. But anyway, sort of correcting the exam paper, I didn't miss too much. About 10 minutes before the end of the exam, I thought I'll just have another look through. And as I'm flipping through the exam booklet, I get to this page, it feels a bit funny. Whoops, 2 pages had stuck together. So there was somewhere between a third and a quarter of the exam sitting totally unseen with 10 minutes to go. Now, luckily, I had intuitively realised that the best thing you can take into an exam room is a calm, attentive state of mind. So I would literally I would get a good night's sleep, never study late the night before, not catch the bus with everybody else on the bus who's going, it's an exam today. I would rather walk from the station to the school and smell the roses. I would literally smell the roses and go in there with just an attentive state of mind, just open, ready to see what was in front of me. And I can't tell you how much that came to the fore, because I did not waste a single second in tearing my hair out, or no, what have I done, I've destroyed my life or anything else. It was just bang, starters going and focus. And I nearly finished that exam in the next 10 minutes, which was, but the mind, for me, that was a very formative experience where the attention is very focused and not on something else, but just focused where it needs to be. We function at a different level. And those kinds of experiences were very formative for me. Self-awareness. So it's well known that if we're more mindful, we notice our reactions more, we notice the effect that they have on other people more, which is very important for emotional development and emotional intelligence. And research shows there's a high correlation between mindfulness and emotional intelligence. People are more mindful, tend to have more emotional intelligence, and vice versa. Emotional regulation, and this overlaps a lot with mental health. There's many people with depression or anxiety are desperately trying to do something to stop having those thoughts and feelings. And the more reactive and judgmental a person gets about those thoughts and feelings, which may inevitably come, the more the person's attention fixates on them and the more intrusive they become until the person finds it hard to get attention on anything else. And mindfulness or meditation teaches us the ability to notice those things, to be at peace in the presence of those things, but not to necessarily have the attention dominated by those things. To be able to exercise the ability to choose, this freedom to choose, to engage with that or to not engage with it. It's not we can't choose necessarily whether that thought's going to come in, but we can choose about whether to engage with it or not when it's there. And this is very important for depression. And I'm not going to go into all the research, but it very clearly shows that that's one of the main areas that mindfulness helps to prevent the relapse of depression for people even who have had it multiple times before. Behaviour and lifestyle change, an interesting study I saw recently in school was looking at preschool teachers. The mindfulness intervention was for the teachers, not the students, but they measured the behaviour of the students. And the behaviour of the students who were in classes with teachers who had been taught mindfulness was far better, less reactive, less aggressive and so on, than students who were in classes for teachers who hadn't had mindfulness training. But behaviour, for the teacher not to multitask, but to give a student quality attention when that student's interacting. That's modelling mindfulness, and students will learn it just by the modelling of it. Physical health, changes and on the brain. So it stimulates new brain cell growth, particularly in the memory and executive functioning areas. It quietens down the stress area called the amygdala. And it also, interestingly, thickens up the grey matter. So it's stimulating new brain cell growth right even into old age. But it also improves the functioning of the executive functioning areas of the brain, and all of these things are very important. The brain's doing things we didn't even realise it could do until 15 years ago. Because the brain wasn't meant to be able to do all these sorts of things that have been taught medically for about 100 years. And also in terms of physical health, it even changes the DNA of, or the functioning of the DNA as well. It slows down the rate of aging on the level of the DNA of the cells. That's measured by telomeres and so on. So for children, even a child who's come from those stressful and traumatic backgrounds, they're already aging faster on a level that can be measured on their DNA. And mindfulness training has been shown to stimulate the repair enzymes and slow down the rate of aging on the level of the DNA. Improves immunity and resistance, so from a physical health point of view. But attention, communication, relationships, if there's no attention, if there's no presence, there's no real room for compassion or empathy. It is very hard, I would actually say impossible, to be cruel and truly be mindful and present at the same time. I don't think you could do that. Because we would notice what we were doing. I think you can do that if you're inattentive, if you're totally running on a mechanical and unconscious and unreflective state of mind, then you can probably be led to do just about anything. But one of the interesting areas shows that also those who develop more mindfulness or awareness also develop more compassion and empathy. And I think that these are very important. And I think all of these areas overlap. So I think it's the single most important life skill that we ever develop, and I just think that there are so many different reasons for that. I've just tried to enumerate a few in about 15 minutes, and I think I'm just about up to my time. So thank you very much for your attention. Hopefully there'll be some questions you want to follow up later on. Thank you.